Welcome to another episode of the Crypto Spin podcast. Jumping right in, yet again, new bill in Colorado encourages state to adopt blockchain for data security. So the state of Colorado has recognized that blockchain will allow the capability of openly traceable transactions while maintaining the privacy of each person performing the transaction. It will help eliminate the headache of creating and maintaining paper records, and it makes the most sense to overhaul the transition from paper to digital utilizing blockchain. And you can probably expect to see a lot of these public-private solutions where there's general public information with another interface behind it that's private for the more sensitive stuff, but it's all technically on the same distributed ledger. Hardware wallet maker Ledger nets $75 million in Series B funding. So the big hardware wallet Ledger has raised money. That's pretty good because it is one of the key ways to securely protect your stash of coins, and it's really, I think, one of 2 or 3 options for hardware wallets. And like I just said, hardware wallets are the best solution to protect yourself because online wallets have the most risk of being hacked or some kind of software injecting itself into your browser or whatever, and everything's gone. And then software wallets sometimes also have pretty big exploits that end up being discovered. And if you're handling a lot of money, hardware wallets is the direction to go. Korean regulator investigating staff insider trading of cryptocurrencies. So the big talk is how Korea is instituting more and more restrictions, and with the last batch of restrictions, it's turned out that some government officials might have been conducting insider trading and still under investigation. But that really makes you think, is that some of the reasons why these announcements were so prolific, while the rumors were so prolific, because there was government officials benefiting from this? Russian tourist loses 4 million in Baht in Bitcoin to fake Interpol agents. So the story with this one is 3 Russian men forced this Russian couple to hand over the password to their crypto wallet or an exchange wallet. It wasn't clear, but the question is really, how did these men know how to target, who to target? Was there just something going on in that area that they're in? Or did they let it be known that they were involved in crypto and such? The men claimed to be international police, but didn't provide any proof. So this gives a kind of a lesson to confirm the identity of the authorities before you kind of give in, because you could lose a lot, and maybe even in some cases your life. So since there wasn't really a lot of detailed information, you can't really say how to prevent a situation like that. So the biggest things you can take away is stay in public areas, try not to out yourself as a big holder for crypto, and if you do, just be cautious, because holding, some of these criminals think people who hold Bitcoin allows them an easy hit where they can't suffer consequences, where that's exactly not true. It's easily traceable, and they can easily have the consequences traced back to, they can easily have it traced back to them. So it doesn't really benefit criminals for doing this, and I don't think many of them have caught on to that yet. But the bad thing for you is if this happened, you're 100% lost to those coins. Because even if the grunts who stole the crypto get caught, you can probably bet that they converted it in something else, like Monero or something else more private, and the person actually in charge of this little heist is enjoying your stolen money. So just be careful. Don't submit to authorities that easily. I mean, if you're in crypto, you should already have that kind of mentality, and it's probably the best way to protect yourself. Bitcoin laundering study. Where do criminals turn to mask illicit crypto assets? So this thing actually dispelled a lot of the rumors that cryptos, well, Bitcoin in particular, is mainly for illicit activities. So it was shown that only around 1% of the network is actually can be considered used for activities like drugs or the black markets, dark web activities, basically, and 1%. And most of the activities take place on very few sites, so it's kind of centralized in a way. And the situation is, whenever one site gets busted, one of the smaller ones that are barely utilized end up having a rush of traffic, and now it's bigger. And the most interesting fact about the illicit activities are most traffic passes through mixers or gambling sites as a way to kind of throw off anyone who's trying to analyze the transactions. But considering only 1% of the entire network is used for it, it just kind of blows out the whole government's suspicion and their kind of casus belli for their war on Bitcoin and heavy regulation is just unfounded. Especially since as time has progressed, illegal activities has become more and more irrelevant to the network. I will admit that at the very beginning it was a significant driver, but not anymore. Not a good 8 years later or whatever. Ledger to ledger. Hardware wallet integrates with decentralized exchange. So as I was mentioning earlier, how ledgers are perfect for storing a large amount of money, they are also integrating a decentralized radar relay platform, which allows ERC20 tokens to be interchanged with, I assume, mainly Ethereum, because it depends on order books that are available. So trading between two tokens will probably be rare, because not many people do lower end alts to other lower end alts, but you'll definitely have the opportunity to trade whatever token to Ethereum and probably back and forth, or probably with any other major token that starts to dominate. It's really not really any that you see common yet that's not Ethereum. Ethereum's just kind of the de facto for these ICO tokens, but yeah, if you get a ledger, I guess you can secure all those ICO tokens if that's what you're into. It's probably be a good investment, considering you'd more than likely make it up on just one ICO. But it's worthy to mention that this whole radar relay platform kind of operates similar to how some DEXs operate, where they kind of just take orders from two different people and match them up for instant for like transfers that don't require you to actually deposit funds into any centralized area. And that's really the strength of this new integration, that you're not risking your funds. And I expect there will probably be some complaints, considering you won't always be able to find someone to interchange a token with to Ethereum or whatever, because it will entirely be dependent on demand and use of however Radar Relay sets up the orders. NYSE, parent company, launches cryptocurrency data feed. So Intercontinental Exchange has partnered with Blockstream to create a cryptocurrency feed. It will utilize real-time information from 15 exchanges. That's kind of a big deal for bigger institutional investors, and I'm sure there was some stupid ideology fight because Blockstream is the one involved here. But that's a discussion for another time. IMF urges global cooperation on cryptos, sees both risk and benefits. So IMF Communications Director Jerry Rice said cryptocurrencies have the potential benefits, including the promotion of financial inclusion and more efficient payment and settlement processes. The risk that they mentioned were your run-of-the-mill arguments about volatility and laundering, which I've already talked about how laundering is completely irrelevant in the greater thing, in like the greater picture of things. At least with Bitcoin, I would not be surprised that laundering is irrelevant for most other alts that aren't privacy coins. And some people are saying that what these financial organizations do for existing cryptos is irrelevant anyway, and that they'll just make something that fits their own framework. They'll make their own coin that fits their framework. And I can see that, considering the existing coins will kind of always have a place to run away if frameworks aren't exactly fitting. And the fact that global cooperation is far from ever happening, honestly, I don't see any kind of worldwide regulation anytime soon, especially when I get down to another article soon. So, the People's Bank of China reportedly ordered payment services to stop serving crypto traders. So China's crackdown continues, and it seems like this has been confirmed that it is true that China is cracking down even more. I don't really understand why they're so aggressive against crypto. It really doesn't make any sense. And it seems like it's damaging China more than the crypto market, because China's become a non-factor in the market, and most traders have fled to Japan or Korea, and Korea is getting hefty, so people probably flock to Japan and Singapore. U.S. Treasury investors warn about the Petro cryptocurrency. If you listen to me for months, I don't know when I talked about this. It was probably sometime last month that I talked about the Petro and the fact that there was already concerns with the U.S. about Korea and such, like North Korea avoiding sanctions using Bitcoin. Obviously, they can't really do anything about Bitcoin itself, but with something like the Petro, which is straight up endorsed by Venezuela, I said I was pretty confident that the U.S. would come up with something that discouraged the speculation on the Petro, and it turns out that's in fact what they're doing. You can get into some very, very hefty legal trouble if you decide to mess around with the Petro cryptocurrency if that it actually comes to fruition. That's kind of up in the air if it's actually going to be a thing. But if it does and you mess around with the Petro, you could very easily be in trouble with the U.S. legal system if they decide to pursue you, because now they made it very clear that any investors who are doing so are kind of slapping the U.S. in the face with these sanctions that they've issued against Venezuela, and you will be punished for kind of circumventing these sanctions. And like I said, I totally expected this to happen. I figured the U.S. would not just allow people to speculate on a currency that would directly benefit Venezuela, considering they'd be in total control of it. And since it would give them the necessary capital to just probably shrug off the effects of the sanctions. That's why I was not surprised to hear that people will get in very heavy trouble if they are kind of funding Venezuela in a way by messing around with the Petro cryptocurrency. So if you're a U.S. citizen, don't do it. I would even risk messing around with it. Switzerland wants to become a crypto nation, and France and Germany want regulation. So Switzerland, obviously embracing crypto because it's revolutionizing financial technology and such. And unlike its neighbors, Switzerland's free to do as they please without any overarching organization like the EU. It's very beneficial. And this kind of plays into the fact that why I said global cooperation about crypto is probably going to be impossible, considering there's already countries that are openly hostile, like China, and there's countries that are openly pro-crypto, like Switzerland, and it'll be more like, at the worst, enclaves where most crypto will flee to avoid heavy regulations. And Switzerland seems like it might be one of these enclaves if it comes down to that. And as long as one country like Switzerland is defying the global will and regulation against crypto, I'm positive that it will still be thriving. Because even if regulations gets pretty heavy, most countries are greedy and will not completely bar crypto from their countries like China will. It'll just make life difficult for traders and businesses. And businesses will flee to these enclaves, and people who get screwed the most is probably just normal lower end traders, which is unfortunate. Lightning Network is happening, and the first physical item has been purchased on the Lightning Network. So, Lightning Network is doing pretty good considering it's still in its infancy. It's very new, very experimental still, and the fee that was paid on this item was only $2.60, which is insanely lower than what we see now. However, you can argue that this still isn't good enough, considering there's other options that settle payments for pennies of the cost, but it's still a step in the right direction. Conversely, this article of Lightning Network may not solve Bitcoin scaling trilemma. The concern is Bitcoin's too illiquid to really be a currency, and the author of this article suggests that the fact that many people just hold Bitcoin to get in and are more concerned about price rather than use will further destroy the liquidity of Bitcoin. And comments that Lightning Network won't even solve this problem of use because of how the payments channels solution is utilized. One thing that articles like this really like to get at hate, like the hate that they get from this, people think this all right, so with situate articles like this, people like suggesting the writer is saying that Bitcoin is going to fail and it's going to be go to zero and it's just dead. I'd say no for anyone who's informed about crypto. There's definitely some uninformed people who are in fact suggesting that, but the more informed people who make articles like this are really suggesting that Bitcoin will not be able to thrive as a currency, and I can definitely agree with that. Its window as a currency is low. And people, especially people who are super maximalists, like to suggest that because you think Bitcoin has no chance of a currency, you're also suggesting that it will be completely useless and will have a lower price than currently. No. I think Bitcoin's price will probably just keep going up because scarcity and all that, but that also means its usefulness as a currency will be bad because currency is meant to be used consistently, wide amount of people. Bitcoin seems like it's more like going to path as kind of an anchor for the rest of the market, where all these other coins are going to see higher uses in the future, but Bitcoin's going to be there for kind of the standard of another standard of how you can measure the worth of a coin, kind of like a gold standard for alts, I guess. And I doubt Bitcoin is losing its number one spot at any time soon, especially not even 5 years from now. It'll still probably be number one because the price is probably going to go insane because scarcity. But down the line, its dominance can definitely wane, and eventually it will lose that spot because Bitcoin's the version one. It will definitely be credited for bringing about major change, but like many first iterations of things, it will eventually prove obsolete in the future. And just one element that's I'm not saying anytime soon. It could be at minimum, I'd say 10 years in the future. Because 5 years from now, I don't see anything really changing. It really depends on when this technology is seen in wider society more. When that happens, that's when I think Bitcoins will start losing its relevance overall. And that's not, like I said, that's not saying that the price will plummet to zero, that it won't be worth a dumb amount. That's just saying that the use of Bitcoin will be a fraction of what it was, well, what it is currently and what it was when it was first introduced. It'll just prove that once all these other things pop up, they'll have their niche uses, and maybe something like Ethereum will be the new kind of king. But like I said, this is all experimental tech. I feel like niche things, niche coins will be the ones that are most heavily utilized. Things that have specific purposes rather than trying to be something mass adopted. But trying to predict the future is hard and kind of stupid. But that's just been my opinion on this little article of talking about how Bitcoin will not talking about Bitcoin's problem and how it's really not a currency, or the window for it to be a currency has flown out the window. South Korean exchanges are barring foreign residents from trading. This move should have been seen pretty easily. And ironically, the reason why Korean markets have such a stupid premium is because it's extremely difficult for foreigners to withdraw the Korean won or whatever it's called, their currency, their like actual currency. And if it was easier for them to be able to navigate the Korean currency, the premiums would not be out of control. They'd be able, if people are able to arbitrage across the U.S., European, and Korean exchanges and such, we wouldn't see Koreans losing as much as they are losing. And the Korean exchanges would be listed on CoinMarketCap again. So it's kind of a case where government regulation is causing the problem. So it's suggested that because of this, foreign businesses will move out of Korea to Japan because they'll be crippled by this ruling, and it really makes it interesting to see if it's more like people from inside the government benefiting from these restrictions, since they'd probably have an easier time being the exceptions to the restrictions. And finally, public blockchain's lure will become irresistible for enterprises in 2018. So to bounce off my little Bitcoin thing, Bitcoin currency, mass adoption spiel I just did, this last article kind of supports the idea of tokenization of everything. So what does tokenization even mean? Basically mean everything will have a digital token equivalent that will allow faster and cheaper exchange. So it's just suggesting that blockchain will be commonplace. Like, for example, you'll have a shipment of anything, let's say shoes, a shipment of shoes. You'll have a kind of a tokenized exchange to go between fiat and shoes. So you'll have a physical crate, but as it's being transferred, it'll be a kind of digital verification of the transfer rather than having paper transfer. Or the key here is really it minimizes the time delay if you have everything kind of in the same form. So both tokens, you don't have to There is one thing that bothers me with this suggestion of tokenization is validating the physical side of things, because validating that a shipment is actually worth this much, there's a lot of room for fraud in saying that, and you need some kind of physical confirmation first before this would really work, now that I'm thinking about what they're suggesting. But in theory, having tokenized value for everything and having that equivalent exchange would make exchanges really easier, because now you're not changing things for money, you're changing tokens for tokens, and you can accept that they're equivalent and go off to accept the actual physical stuff later. But I'm actually kind of concerned that, at least for goods, that it wouldn't work as well. I think for documents, this tokenization is beneficial because faster validation of documents, but I'm not sure if I can get behind assigning token values to physical objects without knowing more about how this process would happen and how you could avoid fraud and other things that would make the tokenized value of something more or less than the actual physical value. And that's where we're leaving off today. There was a lot of conceptual talk today by accident. I guess I had a lot of news that was more fitted for a discussion than anything, which makes me think I should find somebody that can talk about tokenizing everything, because I have questions about that now after reading this. So maybe look out for an interview about somebody who can talk about that. Someone smarter than me who can explain it way better rather than me kind of proposing more questions. And as always, I'm really helped out from you. Yes, you listening. When you rate the podcast on whatever platform you're listening to, especially if you listen to on iTunes or Google Play, rating me on that helps out immensely. So you should do that. And don't forget to also tune in on Thursday for the next episode of the Crypto Spenther podcast. So leave that 5-star rating and tune in next time.